First of all, I want to say that I don't believe it should be cancelled, and I will go into the reasons as to why. Hi, this is Joycelyn Akufo. I'm the founder and director of Geek School Tutoring. So there's been quite a lot in the news about the 11 plus. Initially there were concerns about it going ahead, and I've read that in a couple of the boroughs, namely Kent and Buckinghamshire, they've been called by whether the MPs or small groups who are asking for the 11 plus to be cancelled this year. First of all, I want to say that I don't believe it should be cancelled, and I will go into the reasons as to why. So before we carry on with this amazing video, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so that you will get notified every time a new Geek School video goes up. Enjoy! The first reason is that children who are preparing for these exams will be preparing at home. Even though, for many families, parents are working from home and so on, a lot of parents who are preparing for the 11 plus make available for their children, be it the familiarisation tests or, books like the CGP. Some use Bond, some use a whole raft of available resources. And so I don't believe that the 11 plus will be detrimentally impacted due to the lockdown. If anything, I believe that because there isn't the hustle and bustle and the exhaustion of the school run and commuting to and from school and so on, children will probably have a lot more time to spend on their 11 plus. Children will probably have a lot more time on their 11 plus preparation. I've also read that there are concerns that it will put children from families with a lower income at a disadvantage. Again, I don't believe that this is the case. Research has shown that around 3% of children from low-income families actually attend grammar schools in the first place. And by that, the parameter for determining that low-income-ship is whether those children are in receipt of free school meals, and only 3% of children who are in receipt of free school meals actually attend grammar schools. And so the ones who are not in receipt of free school meals would need to have a household income of around £26,000. And for many of those parents, they earn enough to sort of continue with the tuition that they have lightly been using. We know that a large majority of children preparing for the 11 plus have tuition or get support from their parents. Therefore, I don't believe that, the lockdown and the ensuing impact from schooling will have a hugely detrimental impact on the 11 plus exams of the children for this year. Another reason why I don't think it will is, as much as the lockdown has been running for a few weeks, we forget that this week, it's half term, so this is the May half term. It also had the Easter holidays, which were scheduled anyway. So children haven't had 6 whole weeks of school. What they've had is, yes, it's a significant amount of time being at home on lockdown, but a good proportion of that time was already planned school holidays anyway. And so when you take that out of the number of weeks, I don't believe that it's enough of a period to decide to cancel the 11 plus exams and not allow them to go ahead. Another key reason why I don't believe that the 11 plus exam should be cancelled this year is one thing that isn't factored in any of the reports that I've read in the media is what happens with the children who apply for these exams but are out of borough. So I'm based in Bromley and Lewisham Borough. That's where the Geek School Centres are based. And Lewisham Borough has no grammar school, so a lot of the children who attend our centre in Catford, they apply for the Kent test, they apply for Newstead Wood or St Olave's, which are super selective schools in the Borough of Bromley. They also apply for the Bexley test and the Medway test. What would happen to children like them? You get a lot of Croydon children who apply for the Sutton grammar schools because there are no grammar schools in the Borough of Croydon. So what would happen in that regard? If the 11 plus exams are cancelled, then by default, the local authorities would use the admissions criteria for the different schools, which could be looking at things like distance, whether the child's parents are teachers at the school, whether those children are looked after, i.e. in care, and some of the other criteria. And so without the exam, how do children from out of borough gain access to these grammar schools? From what I can see, it would mean that a whole category of children who've been preparing earnestly, just as much as children who live within the grammar school holding boroughs have been preparing, would be excluded from the selection process, just from distance alone. And distance is one of the key criteria that a lot of the grammar schools, just like other state schools, use to select children. So I feel that it would be hugely disadvantageous to those children if the 11 plus exams were cancelled. Another factor is that many of the 11 plus exams have verbal and non-verbal reasoning as part of their exams. Some schools only do verbal and non-verbal reasoning. For example, Newstead Wood in Bromley. Now, verbal and non-verbal reasoning are non-national curriculum subjects. So regardless of whether schools have been delivering lots of work to children or having online classes or not, verbal and non-verbal reasoning for children who attend state schools would not be part of the scheduled work that the children are given anyway. Even if they were in school, because those subjects are not part of the national curriculum, they would not be taught those subjects anyway. And so you look at counties like Bexley, for which 50% of the score is made up of the verbal reasoning score. Counties like Medway, where 25% of the score is made up of verbal reasoning. And then you look at Kent, where 25% is made up of verbal reasoning, 25% is made up of non-verbal reasoning. I don't see why these exams should be cancelled. If we're basing it purely on children's access to schools, then, it weakens the argument, really. I think that a lot of this conversation about cancelling the 11 plus exams would make it so that children who live in those boroughs, whose parents know how to manage the system and the processes involved in getting their children into grammar schools, namely the middle classes, who have the financial capital, they've got the financial means to pay for online tuition. I have a lot of students in that category, for example, as I'm sure many tutors. Don't you just love technology? So right as I was in the middle of giving my supporting evidence for not cancelling the 11 plus exam, the camera decided to die on me, which is fantastic, isn't it? Anyway, so as I was saying, children who attend state school are working towards SATs. That's the remit of state schools. And so the SATs being held in May puts them at a disadvantage anyway. The way to level the playing field is, number one, to eliminate non-national curriculum subjects like verbal and non-verbal reasoning. And then secondly, to have the exams at a time of year when the entire curriculum would have been taught by. And the benchmark date for that would be May, because the SAT exams are in May. You know, these are things that aren't being considered in the argument. So it would always be unfair for children who come from a disadvantaged background anyway, because they are not being taught accordingly in schools for the 11 plus exams, because quite simply state schools do not have a remit to prepare children for the grammar school exams ever since the phasing out of the compulsory 11 plus exams in the 60s. You know, so generally and overall, I feel that it would be more of a disadvantage to children. Some of them have been preparing for these exams for weeks, months, a couple of years, you know, and to just cancel it would be quite detrimental, because, you know, not just because they would likely not get into the schools, but because of distance, many children would be eliminated, and that would be unfair. You know, it's not exactly the same as cancelling GCSEs and A levels, because there are so many other factors to consider. And the GCSE and A-level students are older. For many children sit in the 11 plus exams, these are the first exams that they've sat externally outside of school, and it's not the same, you know, and they're so young. They're so young. Some of them are still 10 when they sit these exams, you know, so I don't think that they should be cancelled. I think it would be very unfair to cancel it for a number of children, and that's my take on it. I'm keen to hear yours. Please share your comments and opinions in the comments, and I will reply. Okay, so at the time when I recorded the other video, there had just been talk about cancelling the 11 plus. Like, can you even imagine what cancelling the 11 plus would do to the children who have spent so long preparing for these exams? So by the 11 plus, in this context, I'm referring to the grammar school tests. I haven't heard any independent schools even suggesting that they would be cancelled. I mean, obviously, those exams tend to be later on in the year anyway, predominantly in January, but some do start as early as October or November, but predominantly those exams are in January, and I couldn't imagine any independent school not having those exams, because obviously to have a whole year group not turn up, you know, September 2021 would have a huge impact on revenue. But apart from that, the grammar schools, I'd mentioned in the video recording that I thought it would be quite discriminatory to students who live out of borough if those exams were cancelled, because of course the boroughs would fill those places, and it would mean that children who live in close proximity would largely benefit from a free ride into a grammar school, which wouldn't be right, and it would be quite discriminatory to the children who live out of borough, many of which who, when they live out of borough, they often don't have either any grammar schools in their own borough, hence sitting an exam out of borough, or there might be one or two, and so they have to widen the pool and so on. But what I did say is what would be beneficial is to push back the date. And it makes sense to push back the date so that children would have some time to catch up in September, especially those children who, you know, maybe their parents cannot afford to have private tuition, or they don't have the know-how or the means to support their children with the learning. That was the one suggestion that I had. And I'm actually quite pleased that the exams have been pushed back to October and November, you know, so just check your emails. Some of the parents have told me that they've received emails from schools like Kent, or counties like Kent and Bexley, on the Sutton grammar websites, you know, they have put on there that those exams have been postponed until November. So, you know, have a look at the websites, get in touch with the local authorities and find out what's happening in your in the areas for which, or the counties or the boroughs for which you have applied for the 11 plus exams for your child. And you may well find that they've been postponed, which means more time for the children, you know, to practice and catch up and so on. So it's good news all round. I think it's good news. I don't think there's anything detrimental to them being pushed back. Of course, it means that the children have to work a little longer, but considering that, you know, when you look at some of the homework that's been coming back from many of the schools, the work that children have had to do during lockdown, some of it hasn't been at the 11 plus standard, let's face it. Based on reports that I've had from parents with children from state schools in particular, some of them have been quite shocked, disappointed, just bewildered about the standard of work, the level, you know, of difficulty of the work that their children have been given. And yeah, so it's a good thing. It's a good thing. I'm really pleased for the children because that extra time will go some way. So that's what I think about the whole thing anyway. So I just needed to interject. Otherwise, my video would be very bizarre because it would almost be like old news. It just shows you how far ahead I record these videos sometimes. And anyway, I hope it was useful. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you can know when a new video comes up on this channel. Please share this as well. A lot of people don't get access to any of this information. It still amazes me a little bit how much, you know, people are sort of left out in the wilderness concerning this. So we all need to help each other, really. So thank you for watching and see you in the next video.